He paraded his mistress in front of the city's elite, forcing his wife to watch. He stood on stage at the most exclusive gala of the year, holding an award, and called his wife a simple woman, a hobbyist he kept around to remind him of his humble beginnings. The room fell silent, the humiliation hanging thick in the air. But he made one mistake. He didn't just humiliate his wife. He did it in a room full of people, including her mother. And he's about to find out that his wife's simple mother is the one who owns the room the award, and now his entire future. The air in the penthouse was suffocating thick with the scent of Gregory's expensive Tom Ford cologne and Lena's silent anxiety. Outside, the lights of Central Park West glittered like a carpet of diamonds, but inside Lena felt trapped in a perfectly curated high-gloss prison. Is that really what you're wearing?" Gregory's voice sliced through the silence. He didn't look at her, not directly. He was adjusting the onyx cufflinks on his bespoke shirt, his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window, his only audience. Lena looked down at her dress. It was a deep, almost black sapphire velvet, simple long-sleeved with a modest boat neck. It was an archival Bottega Veneta piece, something she had owned for years, long before Gregory had even heard of the brand. It was quiet, elegant, and screamed old money in a way Gregory's flashy, logo-driven wardrobe never could. Yes, Lena said, her voice small. "I've always loved this dress." "You've always loved it," Gregory mimicked, finally turning. His eyes, cold and assessing, raked over her. Lena was a stunning woman. Her dark skin seemed to glow against the deep blue velvet, and her hair was pulled back in an elegant, intricate knot. But Gregory didn't see beauty. He saw a lack of effort. "Lena, this is the Metropolitan Foundation Gala. This isn't one of your little bakery fundraisers. This is my night. I'm receiving the Pinnacle Award. People will be watching. My people. And I am not your people." She asked the words, barely a whisper. Gregory sighed, a theatrical sound of immense suffering. "Don't be dramatic. You know what I mean. I need you to look the part. That thing, it's drab. It's depressing. Bianca is having her dress flown in from Paris. It's Atelier Versace. That is what the part looks like." Bianca. The name hung in the air, a toxic cloud. Bianca, his new executive assistant, a woman whose resume was as thin as the fabric of her dresses. "Bianca is your assistant, Gregory. I am your wife," Lena said, her hands clenching at her sides. "And as my wife, your job is to reflect me, to reflect my success." He stormed over to her, grabbing her arm. His grip was just a little too tight. "I built this. I built Lawson Innovations from the ground up. I dragged us into this world, and you seem determined to cling to your simplicity. My bakery is a multi-million-dollar business, Gregory." Lena said the same argument they'd had 100 times. "It's a hobby," he spat. "It's a cute little place where you play with flour. I am dealing in global logistics in AI, in a future you can't even comprehend. Tonight, the board of the Metropolitan Foundation will be there. The anonymous benefactor, J.D., is rumored to be making their first public appearance. This is the big league, Lena, and you look like you're dressed for a funeral." "Maybe I am," she said, pulling her arm free. His eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "Nothing. I'll put on the diamond necklace you bought." It was a garish, heavy piece of jewelry, new money screaming for attention. She hated it. good. And try to look happy. Try to look impressed. When I'm on that stage, I want you to look at me like you understand what I've accomplished. I know exactly what you've accomplished, Gregory. He took that as a compliment, giving her a satisfied, predatory smile. Exactly. Now don't be late. The car is downstairs, and for God's sake, put on some lipstick. You look washed out. He swept out of the room, leaving her alone with her reflection. The woman staring back at her looked tired, her eyes hollow. She had met Gregory when he had nothing but a laptop and a desperate, charming energy. She had been the one to invest her own savings, a small trust fund from her grandfather, to get his company off the ground. She had coached him, edited his proposals, and believed in him. And he had, in turn, erased her. She picked up her phone. A single text message was waiting. Landing at Teterboro now. I'll see you at the event. Remember who you are, my love. Lena's fingers trembled. Her mother. Josephine. The one person Gregory had always refused to meet, dismissing her as a drifting hippie who lived off the grid in Wyoming. He had no idea. Lena had kept it that way. She had wanted just once to be loved for herself, not for her name. Not for the Devereaux billions. She looked at the garish necklace Gregory wanted her to wear. Then she looked back at the simple velvet dress. With a sudden cold resolve, she left the necklace in its box. She would not be his prop. Tonight, she would be herself. The Plaza Hotel was a fortress of light and power. The entrance to the grand ballroom was flanked by paparazzi, their cameras flashing like epileptic stars, capturing the arrival of New York's old guard and new titans. Gregory, stepping out of the black Mercedes Maybach, was in his element. He preened, adjusting his Tom Ford bow tie, offering the cameras his practiced $1 million smile. He turned his hand outstretched, expecting Lena to take it. When she emerged, his smile faltered, hissing through his teeth. You didn't wear the necklace. It didn't go with the dress, Lena said calmly, her voice surprisingly steady. The cold night air had cleared her head. The dress doesn't go with the event, he snapped, keeping the smile plastered on his face for the cameras. He grabbed her hand and pulled her close, his fingers digging into her side. Smile, Lena. You look like you're attending an execution. I am, she thought. The execution of my marriage. They walked the crimson carpet. The murmurs started almost immediately. Gregory was a known quantity, the brash, handsome founder of Lawson Innovations, the new darling of the tech sector. But Lena was an enigma. She was rarely seen at these events. Who is that? A woman with a face pulled tight by surgery whispered to her companion, loud enough for Lena to hear. That's the wife, Lena Lawson. She runs a cupcake shop, I think. A cupcake shop, good Lord. He's receiving the Pinnacle Award and he brings a baker. And that dress, it's so plain. Did she get lost on her way to a staff meeting? Gregory heard it all. He squeezed her side harder, a silent, painful command to stand taller, to look less common. But Lena couldn't. She felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, all judging, all dismissing. She saw the other women draped in couture, dripping with diamonds that were unlike hers, worn with an air of absolute entitlement. And then the sea of black and white parted. Bianca had arrived. She was a supernova of manufactured beauty. Her dress was, as Gregory had promised, Atelier Versace, a cascade of gold chains and scarlet silk that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. Her hair was platinum blonde, her smile swart and predatory. She wasn't just dressed to kill. She was dressed for a hostile takeover. The cameras loved her. Bianca, Bianca, who are you wearing? Versace, darling, she purred, blowing a kiss. Gregory's mask slipped. A look of genuine, possessive hunger crossed his features. He dropped Lena's hand as if it were burning hot. "Gregory, darling," Bianca shrieked, gliding over. She completely ignored Lena, wrapping her arms around Gregory's neck and kissing him full on the mouth, right there on the red carpet. The cameras exploded. Flash. 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 Lena stood frozen 2 feet away. She was invisible. The humiliation was so profound, so public, it was almost surreal. It wasn't just an affair. It was a public declaration. He was replacing her. "Bianca, you made it," Gregory said, his voice husky. He didn't push her away. He held her waist, his hand splayed possessively on the bare skin of her back. "I wouldn't miss your big night for the world, baby," she whispered, tracing the lapel of his jacket. "We have so much to celebrate." She finally turned her eyes to Lena. She looked her up and down, a perfect painted brow arching in disdain. "Oh, hello, Lena. I almost didn't see you there. That dress is very modest." "Bianca," Lena said, her voice tight. "Gregory," a gala organizer said, rushing over his face a mask of frantic politeness. "Mr. Lawson, your table is ready, right at the front." "Of course," Gregory said. He put one arm around Bianca's waist. He looked at Lena, his eyes flat. "Well, are you coming?" He didn't offer his arm. He didn't wait for her. He simply turned and walked into the ballroom, his mistress on his arm, leaving his wife to follow behind them like a servant. Lena stood for a moment, the flashing lights blinding her, the sound of the crowd roaring in her ears. She had 2 choices. She could turn around, call a cab, and go home. Or she could see this through to its bitter, inevitable end. She thought of her mother's text. "Remember who you are." Straightening her spine, her head held high. Lena Lawson walked into the ballroom. She was no longer just following him. She was going to witness his downfall. The grand ballroom was a masterpiece of opulent vulgarity. Each table centerpiece was a towering explosion of orchids and feathers dripping with crystals. The clinking of silverware on porcelain and the low hum of self-important conversation filled the air. Lena was seated at the head table, table 1, but her position was a mockery. Gregory had placed himself at the head. To his right, in the seat of honor that should have been Lena's, sat Bianca. Lena was placed to his left, but shoved down 1 seat next to a geriatric banking executive who had already fallen asleep in his soup. The message was clear. Bianca was the new priority. Lena was an afterthought. "Isn't this just breathtaking?" Bianca breathed, sipping her champagne. She was talking to Gregory, but her voice was pitched for the whole table to hear. "It's just power. You fit right in, Gregory." "We fit right in." Gregory corrected his hand, rubbing small circles on her back. Lena stared at her plate. She didn't eat. She drank water, the cold liquid a small anchor in the churning sea of her nausea. She watched them. They whispered, they laughed, they fed each other small bites of appetizers. It was a performance, a grotesque, intimate play designed for one audience member, her. After what felt like an eternity of filet mignon and polite applause for minor donors, the host, a famous news anchor, took the stage. "And now the moment we've all been waiting for," the anchor boomed, "the Metropolitan Foundation's Pinnacle Award for Innovation and Leadership. This award goes to a man who has truly redefined his industry. From a small startup to a global powerhouse, Lawson Innovations is changing the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Mr. Gregory Lawson." The room erupted in applause. Gregory stood buttoning his jacket. He kissed Bianca a long, lingering press of lips that made the table fall silent. Then, as an afterthought, he glanced at Lena and gave her a sharp, warning look. "Behave." He bounded onto the stage, shaking the host's hand, accepting the heavy crystal award. He soaked in the applause, his arms raised. "Thank you, thank you." He began, his voice smooth and practiced. "What an incredible honor. To be recognized by the Metropolitan Foundation. It's just... wow." He started with the usual platitudes. He thanked the board. He thanked his team. He spoke about synergy and disruption and scalable futures. Lena could have recited the speech by heart. She'd written the first draft of it. Then his tone shifted. He looked down at his table. "You know, people see me up here," he said, "and they see the success. They see the penthouse, the private jet, the name on the building. But they don't see the struggle. They don't see the beginning." He smiled a wide, disingenuous grin. "But I have a living, breathing reminder of that beginning. Every single day." He pointed, not at Bianca. He pointed directly at Lena. The spotlight operator, confused, shifted the beam. It landed on Lena, pinning her to her chair. She was suddenly illuminated, every eye in the room on her. "My wife, Lena," Gregory said. The room gave a polite, confused smattering of applause. "When I met Lena, I had nothing. And she had a little less than that." A few nervous titters. Gregory fed on it. "She's a simple woman," he continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "A woman of simple tastes. While I'm out here building an empire, she's at home. Baking. Yes, baking. Cookies, cupcakes, little pies. It's adorable." The humiliation was a physical thing. Lena felt it land on her, a heavy, suffocating blanket. She could feel the pitying stares, the quiet, vicious judgment. "And I love her for it," Gregory said, the lie tasting like acid in Lena's ears. "I love that she keeps me grounded. She reminds me that no matter how high I fly, there's always someone back on Earth worrying about whether the brownies are too moist." The room was dead silent. The titters had died. This wasn't a charming anecdote. It was a public execution. Gregory, sensing he was losing them, tried to recover. "She's my rock. My simple, unshakable rock. While I'm here with the brilliant minds, the artists, the real movers and shakers," he gestured to Bianca, who preened. "I know she's at home. Or, well, here in this case." He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "She's probably wondering what all these forks are for." That was it. That was the final cut. The mask of polite society had been ripped away, revealing the monster beneath. Lena didn't cry. She didn't look down. She kept her eyes locked on her husband, her gaze so cold, so steady. It was a wonder he didn't freeze solid. "So thank you," Gregory said, finally sensing he had gone too far. He raised his award. "Thank you to the foundation, and thank you to my wife, for always reminding me just how far I've come." He walked off the stage to a stunned, lukewarm applause. He returned to the table, his face flushed with adrenaline and champagne. He sat down, ignoring Lena, and immediately grabbed Bianca's hand. "How was I? You were magnificent, baby," Bianca whispered, kissing his knuckles. "You told the truth?" "Yes," Gregory said, glancing at Lena, his eyes filled with triumph and malice. "I did." Lena picked up her water glass. Her hand was perfectly steady. She took a slow, deliberate sip, the ice clinking softly against the glass. The sound was as loud as a gunshot in the silence of their table. She set the glass down, and she waited, because she knew what was coming next. The humiliation settled over Lena, not as a hot flush of shame, but as a clarifying Arctic cold. The noise of the gala, the music, the chatter, all of it faded into a distant roar. Her world had shrunk to the few feet of damask tablecloth between her and the man she had once loved. Gregory was basking in the toxic glow of his own cruelty. He and Bianca were now posing for selfies, the crystal award held between them. He was openly, flagrantly erasing Lena from his life, right in front of her. A waiter appeared, his face a mask of professional neutrality, though his eyes darted to Lena with a flicker of pity. "Ma'am, would you care for some coffee?" Lena shook her head, unable to trust her voice. She felt rather than saw the stares of the other guests. They weren't looking at Gregory the victor. They were looking at her, the victim. They were staring with that morbid curiosity reserved for car crashes and public failures. She wanted to run. She wanted to throw her glass of water in Gregory's smug face, flip the table and scream. But she was not a simple woman. She was a Devereux. And Devereux women did not make scenes. They made ends. Her phone buzzed on her lap. She looked down. Another text from her mother. "He's even worse than I imagined. Are you ready?" Lena typed a single word back. "Yes." She put the phone away and looked up, scanning the vast, opulent room. And that's when she saw her. In a discreet, shadowed alcove near the back of the ballroom, far from the power tables at the front, sat a woman. She was not young. She was not flashy. She was dressed in a severe, exquisitely tailored navy blue acris suit. Her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a chignon that was as elegant as it was practical. Her only jewelry was a simple pearl necklace and a man's-style Patek Philippe watch. She was watching. She wasn't watching the stage or the crowd. Her gaze was fixed like a sniper's scope on table 1, on Gregory, on Bianca, and on Lena. This was her mother, Josephine Devereux. To the rest of the room, she was a nobody. An older, well-dressed guest, perhaps a donor's +1. But Lena knew the truth. That suit, while appearing simple, was custom-made and cost more than Gregory's car. That simple watch was a grand complications model worth a small fortune. And the woman wearing them was at that moment the single most powerful person in the room. Josephine had built an empire from her father's small Wyoming land grant, turning it into Devereux Holdings, a silent, sprawling behemoth of energy logistics and high-end hospitality. She was notoriously private, her name never appearing on any rich list, because she'd structured her companies to be utterly impenetrable. She was the definition of stealth wealth. And she was, as Gregory had so mockingly guessed, the mysterious keynote speaker. The anonymous J.D. As Lena watched, Josephine caught her eye. She gave no sign of recognition, no smile of comfort. Instead, she gave Lena a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was a nod of confirmation. The plan is in motion. Stay strong. A new kind of energy surged through Lena. The ice in her veins turned to steel. The shame was burned away by a cold, righteous fury. Gregory had called her simple. He had called her a rock. He was about to find out what happens when you try to build your flimsy, fraudulent house on a rock you don't own. The rock doesn't just sit there. The rock moves, and it crushes everything in its path. The host returned to the stage, his smile looking a little forced. "Thank you, Gregory Lawson, for that very speech, he said, stumbling slightly. And now we have a very special treat. For the first time, the founder and chief benefactor of the Metropolitan Foundation has agreed to address us. We know her only by her initials, J.D. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Ms. Josephine Devereux. At table 1, Gregory's head snapped up. Devereux. He whispered, his brow furrowing. Where have I heard that name before? Bianca, reapplying her lipstick, shrugged. Sounds old and boring. Lena just smiled. She turned in her chair, her entire body angled toward the stage, and watched as her mother, the drifting hippie, stood up from her table in the back and began to walk toward the stage. The simple woman was about to meet the source code. The walk from the back of the ballroom to the stage was not long, but Josephine Devereux commanded every inch of it. The room, which had been buzzing about Gregory's speech, fell into a profound, curious silence. She moved with an unhurried, undeniable authority. She was not a socialite. She was not a celebrity. She was, it was clear to everyone, power. At table 1, Gregory watched, his eyes narrowed. Devereux. Devereux. Lena, isn't that your mother's maiden name? Lena said nothing. She just smiled, a small, private smile that for the first time all night was genuine. Don't be ridiculous, Gregory muttered, more to himself than to her. Her mother is some broke artist in Wyoming. This is just a coincidence. Josephine reached the stage. She did not wait for the host to hand her the microphone. She took it from the stand herself. She stood in the center of the stage, bathed in the same spotlight that had minutes earlier been used to humiliate her daughter. She didn't smile. She simply surveyed the room, her gaze sweeping over the tables of billionaires, senators, and socialites. Her eyes lingered for just a second on table 1. Good evening, she said. Her voice was not loud, but it was deep and resonant, and it carried to every corner of the room without effort. My name is Josephine Devereux. For 20 years I have funded this foundation anonymously. I did so not out of modesty, but for clarity. I wanted the work to speak for itself, not the name attached to it. I wanted to see who would be drawn to the mission and who would be drawn to the money. Her eyes found Gregory's. He shifted in his seat, a flicker of unease crossing his face. The Metropolitan Foundation, Josephine continued, is built on one principle. Integrity. We honor those who build, not those who take. We honor those who create value, not those who simply and loudly claim it. A nervous murmur rippled through the crowd. This was not the light, self-congratulatory speech they were used to. Tonight, Josephine said, we honored Mr. Gregory Lawson with the Pinnacle Award for Innovation, an award, I might add, that comes with a $50 million grant for his company, Lawson Innovations. Gregory's eyes widened. He hadn't known about the grant. Bianca gasped, her hand flying to her chest. 50 million? A substantial amount, Josephine agreed, as if reading her mind. A sum we do not bestow lightly. It is meant to reward not just financial success, but moral character. The character of a leader. The character of a man. She began to pace the stage slowly, her presence dominating the room. I am, as Mr. Lawson might say, a simple woman. I was born in Wyoming. My father was a rancher. He left me land, and I built on it. I built quietly. I built slowly. I built things that last. I learned on that land that you can't fake a foundation. You can't build a skyscraper on soft ground. You can't build a legacy on lies. It will inevitably collapse. Gregory was now staring at her, his face pale, a dawning, sickening horror in his eyes. He was connecting the dots. Wyoming. Simple. Devereaux. "He knows." Lena whispered the words, a quiet, satisfying hiss. "But the most important thing I ever built," Josephine said, her voice softening for the first time, "was not a company. It was my daughter." She turned and looked directly at Lena. This time her gaze was filled with a fierce, protective love. "My daughter. I taught her to be strong. I taught her to be kind. I taught her to see the value in hard work, whether it was in a boardroom or, yes, in a bakery." The entire room turned as one to look at Lena. She was no longer the humiliated wife. She was the focal point of a new, terrifying narrative. "I also taught her." Josephine's voice hardened again, that money should be a tool, not a shackle. So she decided when she fell in love to hide her name, to hide her inheritance. She wanted to be loved for who she was, not for what or for what she had. She wanted a partner, a genuine partner built on a real foundation. Josephine's eyes swung back to Gregory. They were not angry. They were a colder, more terrifying emotion. Disgusted. And she ended up with, "You." The silence in the room was absolute. It was so quiet, Lena could hear the faint hiss of the audio feedback from the microphone. Gregory looked like he had been struck by lightning. His mouth was open, his skin a waxy greenish white. He was staring at Lena, his eyes wide with a confusion so profound, it was almost comical. "Lena," he whispered. Bianca, on the other hand, was doing quick, panicked math. Her eyes darted from Josephine to Lena and back to Gregory. She was realizing in real time that she had hitched her wagon to a dead horse. On stage, Josephine was just getting started. "Mr. Lawson," she said, her voice like velvet-covered steel. "You stood on this stage and you mocked your wife. You called her simple. You mocked her little hobby." She gave a dry, humorless laugh. "Let me educate you on simple. You see that simple dress my daughter is wearing? It's an archival, one-of-a-kind Bottega Veneta from my personal collection. Its insured value is $300,000. But you wouldn't know that. It doesn't have a big, flashy logo." A wave of gasps. The woman who had mocked Lena's dress looked like she was about to faint. "And her little hobby," Josephine continued. "Her bakery, Lena's Kitchen. Let me tell you about that hobby. 3 years ago, Devereaux Holdings, my company, acquired a 49% stake in her business. We began a quiet rollout. As of last quarter, Lena's Kitchen is the sole exclusive patisserie provider for all 180 Devereaux Grand Hotels worldwide. Her little hobby cleared $75 million in profit last year. The sound in the room was a collective strangled gasp. Gregory made a small choking sound. "But wait, I'm not finished," Josephine said, holding up a hand. "Mr. Lawson, you spoke of your company. Lawson Innovations, how you built it from nothing. You seem to have forgotten the $1 million seed investment that got you started." Gregory looked at Lena, his face a mask of betrayal. That was your grandfather's trust." "No," Lena said, speaking for the first time, her voice clear and strong. "It was my trust, from my mother's side. It was Devereaux money, Gregory. You built your entire company on the simple foundation you just spat on." Josephine smiled, "and a very good investment it was. But you see, my company Devereaux Holdings doesn't just invest. We acquire. When your company was struggling 3 years ago during that unfortunate over-leverage situation, you were desperate for a cash infusion, a silent partner. She paused, letting the implication land. Gregory's face was sheet white. No, the silent partner was JH Group, a Swiss holding company. Josephine finished for him. That is a wholly owned subsidiary of Devereaux Holdings. My company, Mr. Lawson, owns 60% of your company. I am your boss. I am your partner. And as of tonight, I am your worst nightmare. The room was in chaos. People were standing, whispering, pointing. This wasn't just a speech. It was a corporate execution. You see, Mr. Lawson, I have a morality clause in all my contracts, Josephine boomed. A clause that states I will not do business with anyone who demonstrates a fundamental lack of character integrity or basic human decency. And what you did on this stage tonight, what you have been doing to my daughter for the past 5 years, is a catastrophic breach of that contract. She looked over at the host, who was standing slack-jawed in the wings. Therefore, effective immediately, the Metropolitan Foundation officially rescinds the Pinnacle Award from Mr. Gregory Lawson. A collective shriek went up. And, Josephine added, her voice dropping, effective at 9 a.m. tomorrow, Devereaux Holdings will be calling in its entire debt line, dumping its 60% stake, and filing a motion with the board to remove you as CEO pending a full forensic audit of your expenses. She looked pointedly at Bianca, including but not limited to company-funded apartments, vacations, and of course Atelier Versace gowns. Bianca stood up so fast her chair screeched backward. He told me it was a corporate bonus, she shrieked at Gregory. You liar, you loser. She picked up her champagne flute and in a perfect dramatic arc threw the contents directly in Gregory's face. She then grabbed her gold clutch and stormed out of the ballroom, shoving a waiter out of her way. Gregory just sat there, dripping with champagne, and ruined his life, utterly, completely, and publicly detonated. Gregory sat paralyzed, a grotesque statue of ruin. The champagne dripped from his chin onto his lapel, mingling with the sweat of pure, unadulterated terror. The cameras which had adored him an hour ago were now vultures, their flashes documenting every twitch of his crumbling facade. He was in this moment the most photographed failure in New York. He looked at Lena. His eyes, stripped of their arrogant fire, were now hollow, begging. He didn't see a wife. He saw a lifeboat. He half stumbled, half crawled from his chair, reaching for her hand, his voice a pathetic gurgling rasp. Lena, baby, please. He stammered, his hand shaking violently. You have to tell her. It was a joke. Just a stupid, terrible joke. Tell her to stop this. It's me. It's us. Lena looked down at the hand reaching for hers. The hand that had held Bianca's. The hand that had gripped her arm in their penthouse. She felt nothing. No anger, no hatred. Just a vast, arctic calm. The man she had loved was a memory. This thing was just a consequence. I didn't know, he pleaded, his voice breaking. You never told me. You let me look like a fool. Her gaze, caught and clinical, rose to meet his. A fool, no, Gregory. You did that all on your own. Stop this, he begged. Tell her to call it off. The grant, the company. It's our life. Tell her to. Lena looked at him. Truly. Looked at him and saw him for the small, frightened grifter he had always been. "Stop what, Gregory?" she asked, her voice calm and clear, cutting through his panicked sobs. "Stop her from telling the truth. You love the truth. You just said so on stage. You were magnificent, remember?" She pulled her hand back out of his desperate, grasping range, and then with the slow, deliberate grace of a queen, Lena stood up. The entire ballroom watched. She was no longer the humiliated wife, an object of pity. She was the epicenter. She bent slightly, picking up her simple, elegant velvet clutch from the table. She smoothed the front of her simple dress, an action so mundane, so unhurried, that it felt like the most profound gesture of power in the room. Gregory scrambled to his feet, his desperation turning, as it always did, to his last remaining weapon rage. His face contorted. "Lena!" he bellowed, his voice cracking. "Don't you walk away from me! Where do you think you're going?" "I am still your husband." His words echoed in the sudden dead silence. It was his final, pathetic attempt to claim ownership, to assert a control that had evaporated. Lena paused. She did not turn her full body, only her head looking at him over her shoulder. Her expression was not one of anger, but of finality, like a judge pronouncing a sentence that had been written long ago. "No, Gregory," she said, her voice carrying in the hush. "You're not my husband. You're just the man I've been supporting. And my dividends. They've just been reallocated." The financial metaphor was a perfectly placed stiletto, the only language he truly understood. She saw the comprehension, the final devastating understanding hit his eyes. She turned away from him and began to walk. It was not a retreat. It was a procession. She did not walk to the exit. She walked with the same measured, powerful grace her mother had shown toward the stage. The sea of billionaires and socialites parted for her. The whispers that followed her were no longer of pity, but of awe. She was no longer the baker. She was no longer the simple wife. She was Lena Devereaux. She reached the stage and ascended the steps not as a victim, but as the victor. She stood beside her mother, two queens, surveying their kingdom. Josephine's eyes were alight with a fierce, profound pride. She didn't hug her daughter. It wasn't the time. Instead, she handed Lena the microphone. The gesture was a coronation. Lena took it. Her hand was perfectly steady. She turned, facing the room, facing the man who had tried to destroy her. She looked out at the sea of shocked, fascinated faces. "I apologize," she said, her voice ringing with the same innate authority as her mother's. The room held its breath. "I apologize that you all had to witness my soon-to-be ex-husband's final performance." She paused, letting the words land. He was right about one thing tonight. He has come a very, very long way from the man I married. So far, in fact, that I no longer recognize him at all. She then locked her gaze on Gregory, who was now being flanked by two large, unimpressed security guards. They hadn't touched him yet, but their presence was a cage. "Tonight," Lena continued, her voice a clarion call of absolute clarity. "He tried to make me small. He called me simple. He mocked my work. He defined me as a hobbyist he kept around to remind him of his humble beginnings." She panned her gaze across the room, meeting the eyes of the women who had pitied her. "Let me be clear. A woman's worth is never defined by her husband's success. It is not defined by his approval, and it is certainly not defined by his public ridicule." Her eyes snapped back to Gregory. "Gregory," she said, and her voice, amplified, was the only sound in the world. You called me your rock. You were right. But you fundamentally misunderstood what that means. A rock is not something you stand on to make yourself look taller. A rock is not a prop for your fragile ego. She took a step forward, commanding the very spotlight that had been used to shame her. A rock is a foundation, and when you try to build a house of lies on a foundation of integrity, the foundation wins. It doesn't move. You just break yourself against it. Or in your case, a rock is what sinks you to the bottom when you've been tied to it for far too long. A collective audible gasp went through the room. It was an execution. Lena held his gaze for 1 second longer, then dismissed him. She turned to her mother. "Mom, I think we're done here." "I agree," Josephine said, taking the microphone back. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your donations. Please enjoy your dessert." Together, mother and daughter, the two most powerful women in the room, turned their backs on the wreckage and walked off the stage. As they reached the grand lobby, the chaos erupted behind them. Gregory's voice, no longer commanding, was a pathetic, hysterical shriek. "You can't do this. Do you know who I am? I am Gregory Lawson." "Yeah," a new bored voice, a security guard's, replied. "You're the guy we're throwing out. Move it." Lena didn't look back. She didn't need to. The noise of the ballroom, the pop, pop, pop of flashbulbs, Gregory's pathetic shouts, it all faded muffled by the heavy doors closing behind them. They were alone in the vast, quiet marble lobby. Lena's phone, deep in her clutch, gave a single, muffled buzz. She paused, pulling it out. It was a news alert from the Wall Street Journal. Lawson Innovations, Law-I, in free fall, down 80% in after-hours trading following CEO's gala scandal and Devereaux Holdings' public divestment. She read it. She felt no spike of triumph, no thrill of revenge. She felt a correction, a balancing of the scales, a messy, painful equation that had finally been solved. She silenced the phone, slipped it back into her bag, and took her mother's arm. She inhaled a deep, full breath that filled her lungs for the first time in a decade. And for the first time in a very, very long time, Lena Devereaux felt completely, utterly, and simply free. The 6 months that followed, the gala of the Great Collapse, as the tabloids had dubbed it, were not a quiet recovery. They were a controlled demolition and a ground-up reconstruction. For Gregory Lawson, the fall was as fast as it was brutal. The abyss he had dangled over Lena had opened beneath his own feet. We find him not in a penthouse, but in a cramped, fluorescent-lit office in a Queens strip mall, the air smelling of stale coffee and desperation. The view from the smudged window was of a parking lot and a discount tire store. His new lawyer, a public defender in a suit that looked slept in, slid a piece of paper across the particle board desk. "They're offering a plea, Greg. It's the best I'm going to get for you," the lawyer said, his voice flat. "Devereaux's people are thorough. The SEC is buried in a mountain of evidence your own innovations provided. Wire fraud securities, fraud embezzlement of corporate funds. They've got you on everything." "Everything," Gregory whispered. He'd lost 30 pounds. The arrogant, preening man from the gala was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed ghost. What does it mean?" "It means you plead guilty, you show remorse, and you get 5 to 7 years, the lawyer said, not looking up from his file. "You go to trial. You'll be making parole applications when you're 60. Devereaux's lawyers won't just win, Greg. They'll make an example of you. You tried to build an empire on a Devereaux's money. You're lucky they're not asking for treason." 5 to 7 years. Gregory choked. That's my life. That's what's left of it, the lawyer said, finally looking at him. Sign the paper, Greg. Gregory thought of Lena. He had tried to call, dozens of times. He'd left frantic, sobbing messages from burner phones. He'd sent emails. All had vanished into a digital void. The penthouse he'd discovered in the most humiliating way possible by having his key card declined had been in her name. The accounts he'd thought were his were joint, and Josephine's legal team had frozen them, seizing back every dollar he had stolen, every expense he had faked. He had tried the press, of course. In one last, pathetic gasp of narcissism, he'd contacted a gossip reporter, trying to spin a tale of a deceitful, gold-digging wife who had trapped him. The reporter had laughed at him. The video of him mocking Lena, followed by Josephine's surgical takedown, had been viewed over 200 million times. He wasn't a villain. He was a meme, a global punchline, a cautionary tale told in business schools. He picked up the pen. His hand, once steady enough to command a boardroom, was shaking. As for Bianca, she had pivoted with the predatory instinct of a shark. The day after the gala, she sold her tell-all, a wildly fabricated story of how she too was a victim of Gregory's web of lies for a meager sum. The check had bounced, but the infamy was enough. The last anyone saw of her, she was a mid-season replacement on a minor reality TV show, The Real Housewives of Secaucus. Her face a little tighter, her voice a little shriller, still desperately grasping for the relevance she had touched for a single fleeting evening. But this story was never about them. It was about Lena. The boardroom of Devereaux Holdings on the 80th floor of a skyscraper overlooking Central Park was the antithesis of the gala. It was silent minimalist and flooded with natural light. The long, imposing table was made of a single continuous piece of reclaimed Wyoming redwood, its surface polished to a mirror finish. It was a table built for substance, not for show. At its head sat Josephine, and to her right, in the seat of the newly appointed co-chair of the Devereaux Foundation, sat Lena. The transformation was breathtaking. The tiredness that had clung to her like a shroud was gone. Her hair was cut in a sharp, stylish bob that framed a face alive with purpose. She wore a crimson power suit, her eyes bright and focused. She was not the woman who had been humiliated at the gala. She was the woman who had been forged in its fire. The final liquidation of Lawson Innovations is complete. A man in a crisp suit reported, his voice echoing slightly in the vast room. After the SEC fines and creditor settlements, Mr. Lawson's personal assets are officially zero. The intellectual property was, as you suspected, negligible. Good, Josephine said, her voice neutral. Wipe it from the books. A failed experiment. And Ms. Lawson, the man said, turning to Lena with a deference Gregory had never afforded her. The national rollout of Lena's Kitchen is proceeding ahead of schedule. The flagship store in Soho opens next week. The press is ecstatic. Vogue is calling you the billionaire baker who beat the bully. Lena smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. I'm not a fan of the title, but I am a fan of the result. Let's move on. The foundation. She stood, and the room's entire focus shifted to her. She commanded it not with volume, but with a quiet, unshakable confidence. The Devereaux Foundation for Women in Business has been officially chartered, she announced, her voice clear and strong. My mother and I have endowed it with its first $50 million. She paused, letting the number land. This is, as some of you know, the exact sum of the rescinded grant from the Metropolitan Gala. A quiet murmur of approval went around the table. My mission for this foundation is personal, Lena continued. We will be seeking out the simple ideas, the hobbies, the small women-owned businesses that are being overshadowed by louder, flashier, male-dominated competitors. We are not just investing money. We are investing belief. We will fund the women who are told to stay grounded while their male counterparts are praised for flying high. We will provide the capital, the legal framework, and the mentorship to ensure that their foundations are built on granite, not on sand. I want to fund the women who are told they belong at home so they can go out and own the building. The applause was real. It was a sound of deep respect. Later that day, Lena was not in the boardroom. She was in Soho at the new flagship location of Lena's Kitchen. The space was beautiful, all exposed brick, warm copper, and the intoxicating smell of fresh bread and cardamom. She was wearing jeans and an apron, a light dusting of flour on her cheek. She was laughing with her new head pastry chef, tasting a new matcha and yuzu creation. She was a CEO. She was a baker. She was, for the first time, wholly and completely herself. That evening, she and Josephine stood at the massive floor-to-ceiling window of the Devereux Holdings office. The city glittered below them, the same carpet of diamonds she had once viewed from her penthouse prison. Now it looked different. It wasn't a wall. It was a map. He tried to call me again, Lena said quietly, not taking her eyes off the view. From the correctional facility, his lawyer passed on a message. He said he was sorry. Josephine sipped her coffee, her expression unreadable. He's not sorry he did it, Lena. Lena turned. He's sorry he got caught. Exactly, Josephine said, a flicker of a smile playing on her lips. Regret is for the sin. Remorse is for the consequence. He only feels the latter. Lena nodded, the last lingering ghost of her old life finally evaporating. She no longer felt anger or even pity. Just closure. I don't know if I ever thanked you, Mum, Lena said, her voice thick with emotion. For all of it. For letting me try to do it on my own. For letting me make my own mistakes. And for being there when the mistake was too big to fix alone. Josephine put her arm around her daughter, pulling her close. My love, you did do it on your own. You built a successful business. You endured an impossible man. You found your strength even when you thought it was gone. I just turned on the lights so you could see the stage. Lena leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. She looked down at the city, at the endless, sprawling web of lights and lives, and she finally understood. Gregory had tried to make her a footnote in his story. He had tried to call her a simple rock, a prop to make him look better. But he had been wrong. She was not a rock. She was the mountain. She was no longer a simple woman, or a victim, or a wife. She was Lena Devereux, co-chair of the Devereux Foundation, CEO of Lena's Kitchen, and master of her own fate. She was no longer a supporting character in someone else's fraudulent life. She was writing her own script, and she was just getting started. The moment Josephine Devereux took that mic, it wasn't just a husband's life that was ending. It was a wife's life that was beginning. Lena was reminded that her value was never ever determined by the man who refused to see it. It was determined by her character, her strength, and as it turned out, her multi-billion-dollar inheritance. Gregory learned the hard way, never ever underestimate the simple woman sitting next to you. You might just be a guest at her mother's party. What did you think of Lena's revenge? Was it the perfect act of karma? Or was it too brutal? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. If you love stories where karma comes knocking, make sure to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life drama. You won't want to miss what we have coming next. They say every grand love story has a twist, but no one expects it to end with heartbreak splashed across front pages. Ana Mendoza was an ordinary woman with extraordinary dreams until she fell in love with the dashing millionaire William Rutherford. Their whirlwind romance dazzled everyone. Charity galas, lavish vacations, and a fairy tale wedding that made headlines. But sometimes, even the most magical stories hide a dark undercurrent. When Anna discovered she was pregnant, William's reaction unleashed a chain of events no one saw coming. Betrayal, revenge, and a shocking expose that rocked high society. This is the story of how one woman fought back. Ana Mendoza grew up in a modest neighborhood in Austin, Texas. She was the eldest daughter of a mechanic, Miguel Mendoza, and a hard-working nurse, Patricia Mendoza. Money was always tight, but love was abundant in their small home, painted a cheerful turquoise at the corner of Oakwood and Hampton Street. Anna learned early on the values of resilience and kindness. She was taught that hard work trumped shortcuts, and that love was a priceless gift rather than a commodity. Despite these humble beginnings, Anna stood out for her spirit and intelligence. She excelled in her studies, dreaming of one day becoming a journalist who could shed light on injustices around the world. While her ambitions soared, so did her curiosity about life beyond her humble neighborhood. She pored over newspapers and magazines, dissecting news stories and analyzing the high-profile lives of the wealthy. She read about entrepreneurs like Bill Gates and admired how philanthropic giving could change entire communities, yet was often frustrated that powerful people could also remain blind to the struggles of others. After graduating with top honors from a local high school, Anna managed to secure a scholarship to the University of Texas at Austin. She majored in communications and minored in political science, hoping to sharpen her writing skills and focus on global issues. During college, she volunteered at a local newspaper, the Austin Tribune, under the guidance of an old-school editor named Harriet Sullivan, who taught Anna to investigate thoroughly and write passionately. Anna's keen eye for detail and empathetic approach to storytelling gained her recognition. One fateful evening at a charity fundraiser for children's literacy, Anna caught the eye of William Rutherford, a charismatic millionaire investor originally from New York. William was in his late 30s and already known for his wide-ranging portfolio: tech startups, real estate, sustainable energy. He was regularly photographed in the society pages, standing beside celebrities like Sofia Vergara and high-profile entrepreneurs at events in Manhattan and Los Angeles. Though unattached officially, the rumor mill frequently speculated about his love life. In person, William radiated the sophistication of old money, but had the hunger for risk, typical of self-made moguls. They locked eyes across the bustling fundraiser. Anna was there reporting for the college news section, taking pictures of the prominent philanthropists in attendance. William, fresh from a business trip to Hong Kong, was leaning casually against a marble pillar, swirling a glass of champagne. Sparks flared when he walked up to her, introduced himself with a smooth confidence, and offered to help sponsor the literacy campaign. Anna was taken aback by how gracious he seemed. He asked about her goals, her volunteer work, and her writing aspirations. That night, She wrote an article featuring William's contribution to the fundraiser. Little did she know her short piece would spark a chain of emails between them. He reached out to thank her for the flattering coverage. She demurred, noting it was just the facts. William, intrigued by her humility and intelligence, invited her out for coffee. Anna accepted partly out of curiosity, partly because his sophisticated presence was hard to ignore. Their coffee date at a trendy cafe off campus felt like the start of a fantasy. William asked about her background, her dreams, her family, and even her struggles. In turn, Anna learned about his early life. The Rutherfords had once been wealthy landowners, but after his father's series of poor investments, William had to rebuild the family's fortune practically from scratch. He was still deeply shaped by that fall from grace, driving him to fiercely safeguard his successes and carefully manage his public image. Soon, one coffee date turned into dinner dates, which turned into weekend trips. Anna felt she was living someone else's life, flying out to Miami on William's private jet, wearing designer dresses he'd insisted on gifting her, attending philanthropic gatherings in New York and London. Her parents were both proud and worried. They'd never seen Anna so happy yet, so far from home. Meanwhile, Anna found herself in the eye of a social hurricane. Paparazzi occasionally snapped pictures of her, and William gossip blogs wondered about the new mystery woman. Over time, though, she grew used to the media glare. After 2 breathtaking years together, William proposed on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. A string quartet played softly in the background, surrounded by discreet security to keep prying cameras away. Anna, shocked but overjoyed, said yes through tears of happiness. They were married 6 months later, in a grand ceremony at a historic estate in the Hamptons. The wedding photos made front-page news in society columns. The millionaire from New York weds the smart Texan journalist. Their first dance was to a live performance of At Last by Etta James's tribute singer. Their honeymoon in Bali was a swirl of rose petals, beach sunsets, and whispered promises of a bright future. For a time, life felt perfect. Anna had a husband who was wealthy, generous, and unbelievably romantic. She'd put her journalism career on temporary hold. At William's request, he insisted she take time to enjoy married life and offered to help her start her own investigative news website whenever she was ready. Love, lavish living, and laughter characterized their initial year of marriage. Yet beneath the glamour, a rift was forming. Anna noticed that William had a controlling streak. He began to question her interactions with male colleagues, criticized her for dressing down when she insisted on wearing comfortable clothes for errands, and discouraged her from pursuing anything that could cast negativity on his investments. She tried to brush these signs aside. After all, he was kind in many ways, and she still believed in his best intentions. Little did Anna know that the cracks in her dream marriage were only going to widen once she discovered she was pregnant, and that the child she carried would become the catalyst for heartbreak and revenge that no one could have predicted Anna had always wanted. A family growing up in a tight-knit household, she envisioned giving her own children the warmth and security she'd once had. Early one morning, after feeling a wave of constant nausea, she decided to pick up a pregnancy test from a pharmacy near their penthouse on 5th Avenue. She took the test in the lavish marble bathroom with trembling hands. 2 lines are positive. Her heart soared with joy, imagining telling William that they were about to be parents. Perhaps, she thought, a baby would bring them closer together. Lately, William's controlling behavior had escalated. He was checking her phone, questioning her every expense. She hoped the news of their child would soften his rough edges, remind him of what truly mattered, beyond wealth and reputation. That evening, she prepared a special dinner at their penthouse, her mother's recipe for chicken enchiladas, fresh guacamole, and a creamy flan for dessert. She was determined to create a warm setting to announce the joyous news. William arrived late, looking harried, a deep furrow in his brow. He barely acknowledged the table filled with her carefully prepared dishes. Anna tried to lighten the mood, guiding him to sit, pouring him a glass of wine, which he accepted absent-mindedly. Then, with a beaming smile, she told him, "William, I'm pregnant. We're having a baby." A long silence followed. William set down his wine and stared at her. Anna expected happiness, relief, anything but the coldness that settled over his features. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight. "Are you certain it's mine?" Anna felt like she'd been slapped. She stammered through confusion and hurt, reminding him that she'd been faithful. But William's eyes burned with suspicion. He muttered about the timing being far from ideal, about how the responsibilities of fatherhood could weigh heavily on his business dealings, about how he needed to be absolutely sure. Anna was stunned. This wasn't the man who had courted her so sweetly, who had claimed to love every part of her soul. In the days that followed, William's behavior grew increasingly distant and dismissive. He demanded a paternity test, subtly casting doubt on Anna's character. Heartbroken Anna agreed to the test, desperate to prove she was telling the truth and to salvage their relationship. The results, of course, showed William was the father, yet his relief was overshadowed by cool calculation rather than joy. Anna overheard hushed phone calls, snippets about prenuptial agreements, potential legal ramifications. Although they had signed a prenup, the baby introduced new elements that might complicate William's finances and public image. One evening he left for a business trip to Silicon Valley and never returned home. Days melted into weeks. Anna tried calling him, texting him, sending emails. His replies were curt and cold. She found out through a business news article that he had flown to London for a series of meetings with technology investors and had spent weekends hobnobbing with wealthy aristocrats in Monaco. All the while, Anna grew more anxious, battling morning sickness and heartbreak in their once cozy penthouse that now felt like a gilded cage. Harriet Sullivan, Anna's old mentor from the Austin Tribune, reached out to see how she was doing. Anna hesitated, but eventually confided that something was deeply wrong in her marriage. Harriet, protective as ever, urged her to not let William walk all over her. Harriet also reminded Anna that her investigative talents could be harnessed to uncover truths even within her personal life. More than once, Harriet said, "Don't forget you have the heart of a reporter. Use it if you need to." One day, Anna woke up and found a note on the dining room table, presumably delivered by one of William's staff in the early morning hours. The message was brief and devastating. William was ending their marriage. He demanded she move out of the penthouse. He wanted no further obligations toward her, except for a financial settlement that his lawyer would draft. Anna felt her entire body go numb, tears streaming down her cheeks as she read the letter. She was 4 months pregnant, exhausted, and tossed aside like an inconvenient piece of baggage. Broken but not beaten, Anna packed her belongings. She left the penthouse that same day, ignoring the sympathetic looks from the staff who had come to care for her. With nowhere else to go in New York, she booked a flight home to Austin. Her father Miguel picked her up from the airport, eyes brimming with concern when he saw his daughter pale and trembling. Though she tried to hold back tears the moment she collapsed into his arms, her anguish poured out. There in her childhood bedroom, Anna clutched her belly and resolved to protect her unborn child from William's cruelty. She also felt an ember of anger spark within her. For the first time, Anna found herself wondering if William had secrets, dark ones, and whether she had been chosen for his agenda rather than for love. In the weeks following her return to Austin, Anna wrestled with heartbreak, embarrassment, and fear about the future. She wanted to believe that William's abandonment was just a temporary lapse in judgment. But her calls and messages continued to go unanswered. His lawyer, a polished man named Maxwell Carmichael, reached out instead with a generous settlement offer and a confidentiality agreement. Anna was shocked by the coldness of it all. She was supposed to hush up her entire relationship, accept a payout, and vanish from William's life. Furious, she refused to sign immediately. Time slowed down in that painful limbo. Her belly grew rounder, a daily reminder of the life inside her, and the father who wanted nothing to do with them. Her parents, though supportive, were worried about finances. Patricia had just been through a health scare and was too weak to keep working. Double shifts, Miguel's mechanic shop needed urgent repairs and new equipment. Anna began to wonder if taking William's settlement might be the pragmatic move for the sake of her family and the baby. Yet a deeper instinct told her not to cave, that something about William's abrupt shift was more than just a selfish decision. There was something bigger beneath the surface. Determined to find answers, she contacted Harriet Sullivan again. Harriet visited Anna in Austin, taking her out for lunch at a cozy cafe, over steaming mugs of peppermint tea. Anna confided all the abrupt abandonment, the soulless note, the financial settlement, hush money. Harriet listened gravely, then offered a suggestion that would set Anna on the path of discovery. Investigate William's recent business dealings. Maybe his sudden decision to discard her had roots in hidden debts, shady partnerships, or an upcoming scandal that fatherhood would complicate. Energized by Harriet's idea, Anna began quietly digging. She scoured financial news articles, looking for clues about William Rutherford's ventures: Rutherford Real Estate Group, Rutherford Tech, Investments, Rutherford, Sustainable Energy. His empire seemed unstoppable. But then she stumbled on a line in a niche finance blog referencing Rutherford's questionable offshore accounts. A few more days of searching led her to a bigger puzzle. There were rumors that William had allegedly manipulated stock prices for one of his tech startups, WeConnect, by feeding false projections to investors. Officially, everything looked squeaky clean, but whispers in the finance community suggested otherwise. Anna also discovered an SEC inquiry had been launched quietly. No mainstream media source had covered it yet. A potential scandal of that magnitude could topple a man like William Rutherford. His image as a philanthropic sweetheart would be replaced by the label of a fraudster. Anna's journalistic instincts flared to life. Could William's decision to cut ties with her be part of a strategy to protect his empire? Perhaps he believed a pregnant wife, someone who might discover and reveal his secrets, was a liability. Or maybe he feared that if the scandal broke, she'd become an unwilling accomplice. Still, Anna needed more concrete evidence. She set up phone calls with ex-employees of Rutherford's companies, speaking under the guise of a journalist doing a feature. She reached out to old acquaintances in New York's philanthropic circles. She even ventured into the dark corners of online finance forums. Piece by piece, a disturbing picture emerged. William was rumored to be funneling investor money into personal projects, using shell companies registered in Caribbean havens to mask suspicious transactions. Though Anna lacked the smoking gun, the circumstantial evidence pointed to major financial misdeeds, and it was all hush-hush, probably because people feared William's litigious nature. Meanwhile, Anna had to face her personal challenges: doctor's appointments, the emotional toll of impending single motherhood, and the swirling confusion of heartbreak. Sleep grew elusive. She'd toss and turn in her childhood bed, glancing at her phone, hoping for a message from William that never came. Instead, Maxwell Carmichael's legal team kept sending her urgent requests to sign the settlement. They threatened that her refusal to comply would end in a drawn-out legal battle and zero support for the baby. Anna resolved that before she made any decision, she needed that smoking gun. She had to know the truth about William's underhanded dealings. If he was indeed committing financial crimes, she'd use that as leverage to ensure her child's future and reveal his true nature. If she discovered nothing, she'd sign the settlement, walk away, and pray for peace. The next day, she booked a flight to New York, telling her concerned parents that she needed just a few days to settle her business. Harriet agreed to meet her there. Donning a brave face and a trench coat that used to fit her better before pregnancy, Anna stepped back into the city that had once felt so glamorous, determined to uncover the truth about the man she had married. Anna checked into a modest hotel on the Lower East Side, far from the five-star accommodations she used to frequent with William. She used Harriet's press credentials to set up interviews under the pretext of writing a piece on philanthropy and tech entrepreneurs. Under that cover story, Anna managed to speak with lower-level employees in William's venture capital offices. Most were tight-lipped. William paid well, and loyalty ran deep. But a few discreetly hinted at suspicious transactions, though they were too scared to go on record. Desperate for more, Anna rummaged through corporate filings at the local business registries. Harriet helped cross-reference addresses and scanned through old newspaper archives for anything linking Rutherford's companies to known shell entities or past controversies. It was an uphill battle. William's legal team was adept at burying digital footprints, but Harriet had taught Anna the importance of patience in investigative work. If you keep searching, eventually a thread will appear. Their breakthrough came from an unlikely source, an accountant named Linda Farnsworth, who had once worked at Rutherford Tech Investments. Anna discovered Linda's name buried in a public lawsuit docket. She had sued Rutherford Tech for wrongful termination and settled out of court. After some coaxing, Linda agreed to meet Anna in a quiet bookstore cafe away from prying eyes. When Anna showed up, Linda looked nervous, glancing over her shoulder as if she expected to be followed. "It's not safe for me to talk about this," Linda whispered, her fingers trembling around a cup of chamomile tea. "I signed an NDA. I could lose everything if I reveal details." Anna leaned in, speaking softly, but with urgency. "I'm William's wife," she said, voice breaking. "He left me. I'm pregnant with his child, and I suspect he's involved in something illegal. I don't know what to do. Please, Linda. Anything you can tell me might help me protect my baby, protect myself." Seeing Anna's distress, Linda's expression softened. She began carefully explaining how, during her time at Rutherford Tech, she noticed large sums of money being transferred between several accounts that didn't match any official projects. She tried flagging it to her superiors, but they fired her under dubious circumstances. The settlement was quick and generous, provided she remained silent about her discoveries. Linda couldn't share documents; those were locked away. But the names of the suspicious accounts were forever etched in her memory. She scribbled a few cryptic references on a napkin: HT Holding, Nova Horizons, East Lake Consulting. Then she added, "They're all linked, different addresses, but all roads lead to a private trust in the Cayman Islands." An electric surge ran through Anna's veins. She now had a lead. If she could tie these shell companies directly to William and track the money trail, it could confirm his involvement in fraud or embezzlement. She thanked Linda profusely, promising to keep her name out of it. The accountant left quickly, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and relief. Armed with these leads, Anna and Harriet dove back into research mode. They discovered that HT Holding had a small office address listed in Brooklyn, likely a front. Anna decided to check it out in person, though Harriet warned her to be cautious. One cold, drizzling morning, Anna took a taxi to the address, her heart pounding. The building was a run-down warehouse with no visible signage. She tried the door. It was locked. Peering through the dirty windows, she saw only dusty boxes and a reception desk stacked with unopened mail. Suddenly, a heavy-set man in a dark suit stepped out from behind the warehouse. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice gruff. Anna froze. She recognized him. He was one of William's security guards, often seen at social events. Her blood ran cold, murmuring an apology about being lost. She hurried away as quickly as she could, ignoring the guard's suspicious gaze. That moment cemented her fears William had layers of protection around his shady dealings, and if she dug too deep, she might be putting herself in danger. Returning to the hotel, she found Harriet waiting anxiously. Harriet's own research had yielded more references to shell entities linked to Rutherford's circle, though none directly named William. Still, it was enough for Anna to suspect that William was funneling money illegally. Harriet suggested they approach a major newspaper or an online investigative platform with what they had. But Anna wasn't ready. She needed a direct link, something that would unequivocally tie William to these accounts. Without that, it could be brushed off as rumors or personal vendettas. That night, Harriet left to meet a colleague, and Anna was alone in her hotel room. Half asleep, she heard her phone vibrate. The call was from an unknown number. A raspy voice hissed, "Stop poking your nose where it doesn't belong. Sign the settlement and walk away. You don't want to bring trouble on yourself or your baby." Before Anna could respond, the line went dead, shaken to her core. Anna realized the fight she was in was far more dangerous than she anticipated, but instead of scaring her off, it fueled her determination. She refused to be intimidated by shadowy threats. Memories of her father's advice floated back to her. Right is right, even if it's hard. You can't let fear control you. Besides, after everything William had done, Bonner wouldn't let him get away with hurting her, abandoning his child, and possibly defrauding countless investors. Her unborn baby deserved justice, and she intended to secure it. The following day, Harriet arranged for Anna to meet a trusted investigative journalist, Mark Underwood, who worked for a reputable national paper. Mark had reported on corporate fraud cases before including high-profile exposés that led to resignations and lawsuits over coffee. Anna laid out her findings and expressed her fear that she didn't yet have the definitive proof to implicate William Rutherford. She needed Mark's network resources and expertise to solidify the story. Mark was intrigued. He agreed that the thread linking William to the shell accounts was the story's linchpin. "We need actual transaction data or testimonies from insiders who can confirm Rutherford's direct involvement," he said, scanning through Anna's notes. "Otherwise, it's circumstantial." While Harriet believed Mark could be trusted, Anna felt torn. If they went public too soon, William's legal team would discredit her as a spiteful ex-wife. She also risked him shutting down any remaining leads. Mark, sensing her internal conflict, reassured her they'd keep everything confidential until they had a rock-solid case. "But we've got to move quickly," he warned. "Money flows in and out of these shells fast. If Rutherford knows we're close, he'll bury them over the next few days." Anna collaborated with Mark's newspaper's research team, cross-referencing data from corporate registries and banking disclosures. She noticed that Harriet was uncharacteristically silent sometimes, leaving for hours without explanation. Anna guessed Harriet might have her own methods for unearthing information. She also found herself wishing she could confide everything to her family, but she didn't want to burden her mother and father with fear for her safety. At 5 months pregnant, her body was going through changes that left her exhausted, but she pushed through, driven by a fierce love for her unborn child. While scanning an SEC filing late one evening at the newspaper's office, Anna felt a sudden sharp pain in her abdomen. Alarmed, she tried to breathe steadily, telling herself it was just stress. She ended up in the break room, hands shaking. Mark found her pale and sweating, insisting on driving her to the nearest hospital. After an anxious examination, the doctor assured her the baby was fine, but warned her about overexertion. "You must reduce stress," he stressed. "Your child's health depends on it." That night, lying in a hospital bed, Anna realized she was treading a dangerous line. Should she sign the settlement, vanish from William's world, and give her baby a secure, if silent, future? Or should she keep pushing for the truth and risk everything? Images of William's betrayal collided with thoughts of the baby's uncertain future if Anna didn't secure child support. Then she remembered her father's words and Harriet's unwavering support. "You have the heart of a reporter." Harriet had said Anna couldn't live with herself if she walked away from the biggest story of her life, a story that was also deeply personal. She checked out of the hospital the next morning, resolving to push forward, but promising herself she'd be mindful of her health. Upon returning to the newspaper's office, Mark greeted her with an urgent expression. "We got something," he said quietly. A confidential source had provided partial access to some offshore transaction records. Among them was a reference to a W. Rutherford initiating a transfer to Nova Horizons, one of the shell companies Linda had mentioned. This was the first direct naming of William in the context of an overseas funnel. Mark believed they could use it to pressure more sources to come forward. Excitement and dread warred inside Anna. They finally had a tangible link, but it was still incomplete, just a single transaction. Nonetheless, they decided to approach a forensic accountant to verify its authenticity. If it checked out, they would be one step closer to undeniable evidence. The forensic accountant confirmed that the transaction was real, but cautioned that William's legal team would attempt to discredit the leak or claim that the W. Rutherford on record was someone else. They needed a pattern of transactions, an unequivocal paper trail. Just as Anna was preparing for another day of digital sleuthing, she received a call from Harriet, who sounded breathless. "Meet me at the place you first started digging, the coffee shop on 42nd Street." Harriet said, confused but trusting her mentor. Anna hailed a cab. When she arrived, Harriet handed her a small manila envelope, eyes glittering with excitement. "I told you, I had a few tricks up my sleeve," Harriet said. Inside the envelope were copies of bank statements linking multiple transactions from William Rutherford's personal trust to Nova Horizons East Lake Consulting and several other shell entities. There were time stamps, official bank stamps, enough to create a damning mosaic of fraudulent activity. Anna gaped at Harriet. How Harriet just gave a knowing smile. "I'm an old reporter with old connections. Let's just say, not everyone in Rutherford's circle is loyal to him anymore. Word travels fast when someone abandons a pregnant wife." Tears pricked Anna's eyes. She hugged Harriet, whispering her thanks. With these documents, they had everything needed to reveal William's crimes. Anna sat at the edge of the bed in Harriet's apartment, the morning light filtering through gauzy curtains. Her heart raced, though she tried to still it, with deep, steady breaths. On the table before her lay the manila envelope, simple, unassuming, yet filled with the power to tear down. An empire inside were irrefutable documents, bank statements, time-stamped transactions, the names of shell companies, all linked directly to William Rutherford. It was everything. Proof not only of his betrayal as a husband, but of his crimes as a public figure. Harriet's eyes sparkled with quiet pride as she poured Anna a cup of mint tea. "You ready?" she asked gently, placing the warm mug beside her. Anna's hand trembled slightly as she reached for it. The tea was meant to soothe, but nothing could dull the storm brewing inside her. "I don't know if I'm ready," Anna admitted, "but I know I have to do this." Mark Underwood, the seasoned journalist from the national paper, met them downstairs. His usual stoic expression had softened. He understood what this moment meant. They hailed a cab and rode in tense silence to the Midtown office of William's attorney, Maxwell Carmichael. The law firm was sleek, modern, sterile marble floors, glass walls, receptionists with emotionless smiles. As Anna stepped off the elevator, her baby shifted inside her, a small nudge against her ribs, as if reminding her, "I'm with you." Carmichael greeted them with that same smug, polished facade Anna remembered from earlier settlement talks. He gestured toward a conference room. "I assume this is about the settlement," he said smoothly, eyeing her belly as if it were an inconvenience Anna didn't answer. Instead, she opened the envelope and slid the documents across the table. For a moment, no one spoke. Carmichael's confident posture faltered as his eyes scanned the contents. The color drained from his face. His fingers twitched at the corner of the page, as if he wanted to tear the papers apart, but knew better. "Where did you get these?" he asked, voice low and sharp. Anna met his gaze, unwavering. "That's not your concern. What matters is that the truth is here in black and white." Harriet leaned in her voice, calm but firm. "These documents have been independently verified by forensic accountants. Every stamp, every signature, every transfer is legitimate." Mark added, "Our legal team is prepared to move forward with publication, but in the spirit of journalistic ethics, we're offering William the chance to respond before the story goes live." For the first time, the smooth-talking attorney looked rattled. He leaned back in his chair, jaw clenched. "You realize the damage this will cause, not just to William, but to you as well. Public backlash, legal warfare. Is that really what you want?" Anna swallowed hard. Her chest ached not from fear, but from years of suppressed truth, of love given and abused. "What I want," she said slowly, "is for my child to grow up knowing that his mother didn't cower, that I stood up for what was right." Carmichael's tone changed. "Let's be civil. We can make this go away. How much do you want to keep this quiet?" The words hung in the air like poison. Anna blinked. For a moment, she was back in that penthouse kitchen, setting down a homemade meal, announcing her pregnancy, with hope in her voice. Only now did she fully see the rot that had existed behind the marble countertops and designer suits. "You're offering me a bribe," she said coldly, "to bury the truth, to protect a man who left his pregnant wife and stole from thousands of investors." Carmichael began to protest, but Mark pressed a button on a small recorder in his pocket. The red light blinked. "I wouldn't deny anything. You've said so far," he said, with a razor's edge in his tone. Harriet leaned forward. "You know what's coming, and you know your client can't escape it." Silence fell again. Carmichael's confidence had withered. He stood stiffly, straightened his tie. "You'll destroy William's entire legacy with this. He'll retaliate." "Don't think he won't." Anna stood too. Her belly led the way, round and full of promise. "He destroyed himself," she said. "This is just the world seeing him for who he really is." With that, they walked out. The doors to the firm clicked shut behind them, like the closing of a chapter. Outside, the city roared as usual. Horns, footsteps, the hum of people going about their lives. But for Anna, the world had gone silent for a moment. A great weight had lifted. The wind swept through the streets, and Anna inhaled deeply. Harriet placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did it." She didn't feel victorious yet. That would come later. But in that instant, Anna felt something she hadn't in months, 3 days. That's how long it took for Anna's world to change again. On the morning of the third day, Anna stood by the window in Harriet's apartment, holding a warm cup of chamomile tea, her fingers wrapped tightly around the ceramic, like it was the only thing grounding her. Outside New York pulsed with life. Unaware that it was about to be shaken by a story too big to ignore, the article went live at exactly 8:07 a.m. Charitable financier or fraudster allegations mount against millionaire investor William Rutherford. The headline was bold-centered. Impossible to look away from Mark Underwood's byline appeared just beneath it, alongside a small note with contributions from Harriet Sullivan and an anonymous source close to Rutherford. Anna's heart thudded as she scrolled. There it was, the full expose. Every detail, every transaction, every shell company, each account tied back to William. The documents Harriet had secured were featured as exhibits. But what drew Anna's eyes most were the words Mark had chosen to describe her. A woman betrayed, but not broken. A mother who refused to be silenced. A journalist who became the story she was born to write. By noon, the story had gone viral. National outlets reposted it. International ones translated it. Financial blogs tore through the implications. Pundits on cable news panels debated whether William Rutherford was merely ethically murky or a full-blown criminal, and social media. It exploded. Anna's face, captured in old paparazzi shots from galas and gala nights, smiling beside William in designer gowns, was now plastered across feeds with hashtags like "pregnant whistleblower," "Rutherford scandal," and, disturbingly, "gold digger or heroine." "I can't believe how fast this is moving," Anna whispered, setting down her phone, hands trembling. Harriet turned from the kitchen, a pot of soup bubbling behind her. "You lit the match, sweetheart. Now watch the fire burn." But the fire didn't burn evenly. William's response was swift and brutal. By evening, his PR machine had kicked into full gear. Polished statements were released, denying everything. The documents were fabricated. The accusations, vindictive and orchestrated. And Anna. According to them, she was a scorned, unstable woman, attempting to extort a respectable businessman. They went further. They leaked private details of Anna's past. Her college essays, her social media posts from years ago, even misrepresented her academic work to imply she had radical views. The same woman who once posed beside William at galas was now being painted as a manipulative social climber. The smear campaign hit hard. Trolls flooded Anna's inbox. Comments appeared under every post about the article. Some sympathetic, others venomous. "You trapped him with that baby." She was always after his money. Typical journalist lies for fame. Anna tried to block it out. She kept reminding herself. This was about the truth, about justice, about Matteo. But when her father called from Austin, his voice shaking, she nearly broke Anna. "There's reporters outside the shop. They're asking questions, shoving cameras in my face. Your mother's not doing well. Her blood pressure's high. I'm so sorry, Dad. She choked out. Miguel's voice softened. You did the right thing, mija, but it's going to be a rough storm. You hold on, you hear me? You hold on for that baby. The next day, things escalated again. William filed a defamation lawsuit, not just against the newspaper or Mark, but against Harriet and even Anna herself. He also requested a restraining order, accusing Anna of harassment. The irony nearly made her laugh, if it didn't hurt so much. At that point, Anna moved in full-time with Harriet for safety. Paparazzi lingered outside. Strangers took photos of her baby bump like it was tabloid gold. She tried to keep calm, to stay grounded. She began talking to her baby, more as if the tiny heartbeat within her could keep her own steady. You're not just my reason to keep going, she whispered one night as she lay awake. You're my proof that love still means something. And then, amid the chaos, came a call. A woman's voice, crisp and clear. Anna Mendoza. My name is Dr. Cynthia Rollins. Harriet gave me your information. I'm an OB-GYN, and I'd like to offer you prenatal care, free of charge. Anna blinked, tears already gathering. Why, she asked, voice cracking. Because what you're doing takes more strength than most people ever have, and I think you and your baby deserve someone in your corner. That night, Anna wept, not from fear or anger, but from gratitude. Weeks passed, and with every day, William's foundation crumbled more. Investors began pulling out. His board members resigned. And then came the moment Anna didn't expect. So soon, a federal investigation was announced. The charges were real. The government was watching. Still, it wasn't over. One night, unable to sleep, Anna scrolled social media. Despite Harriet's warning, a private message popped up. A user with no profile picture, no real name. I used to work for Rutherford. I have more proof. Emails direct from him. He knew what he was doing. Anna's fingers hovered over the keyboard. A trap. A lifeline with caution, she replied. Hours later, Mark had the emails, messages from William himself, discussing SEC regulations, skirting legal boundaries, laughing off accountability. That was the final crack. William's attorney, Maxwell Carmichael, was rumored to have stepped down. The man who once sneered across polished conference tables now disappeared from the spotlight altogether. But Anna, she stood firm. She was no longer the dumped wife. She was the woman who exposed a lie too big to ignore, who stood tall through the firestorm, who carried not just a child, but the truth. And through it all, Mateo kicked in her belly, like he knew his mother had won the first of many battles for them both. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and cold resolve. Anna sat quietly at the plaintiff's table, 8 months pregnant, and wrapped in a navy blue maternity dress that hugged her belly like armor. Her hands rested protectively atop the swell of her child fingers, intertwined in a gentle prayer for strength. Around her, the air was heavy with anticipation. Journalists scribbling in notepads, murmurs from the public gallery, the low hum of microphones being tested. Across the room sat William Rutherford. Gone was the charismatic mogul, in tailored suits and confident smirks. His skin looked drawn, his eyes sunken. He wore a dark suit that seemed to hang loose on him, as if he were shrinking under the weight of the allegations. When their eyes met just for a heartbeat, Anna saw not the man who once whispered vows beneath chandeliers, but a stranger consumed by self-preservation. The trial had officially begun. A grand jury had indicted William on multiple counts: wire fraud, securities, violations, money laundering, the culmination of months of investigation, whistleblower accounts, forensic documentation, and Anna's courage. She had been subpoenaed to testify. As she made her way to the witness stand, each step felt like a mile. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes on the woman who had become a symbol of betrayal, of resilience, of justice. The bailiff held out a Bible. Anna placed her hand atop it, swore the oath, and sat. Her voice, though soft, carried weight. She told the truth, not just the facts, but the emotional toll. How William had walked out without warning. How she had been left to navigate pregnancy alone. How suspicion turned into discovery. And how she unearthed secrets meant to stay buried. Her hands trembled at times. Her throat caught, but she never faltered. "I didn't set out to ruin anyone," she said, glancing toward the jury. "I just wanted to understand why someone I loved turned so cold. I didn't expect to find crime. But once I did, I couldn't look away." William sat motionless, eyes burning holes through the floor. Then came the cross-examination. His defense attorney, sharp and theatrical, attempted to flip the narrative. He painted Anna as vengeful, manipulative, driven by jealousy. He questioned her motives, her character, even her credibility as a journalist. "Isn't it true," he sneered, "that you were desperate for attention, that your investigation was really just an elaborate act of revenge?" Anna looked at the attorney, then to the jury. "No," she said simply. "What I was desperate for was the truth. For my child, for the people William hurt." Her composure silenced the room. Linda Farnsworth, the former accountant, who had first shared the names of the shell companies, also took the stand. Her voice quivered, but her testimony was devastating. She confirmed the suspicious money transfers, the internal warnings, ignored the fear of retaliation. Other former employees testified anonymously, describing a culture of secrecy and intimidation. The prosecution laid out its case with methodical precision: bank records, email chains, witness statements. Piece by piece, the image of William Rutherford as a titan of industry crumbled. The jury could see what Anna had seen long ago. A man so obsessed with power, he'd risk everything, including a family, to preserve it. During breaks, Anna stepped outside to breathe. Journalists hounded her for quotes, but she said little. Her thoughts were focused inward on the life growing inside her. At night, she curled up in Harriet's guest room, Matteo kicking gently as if to remind her, "We're almost through." Then came the verdict. The jury deliberated for just under 4 hours. Anna sat holding Harriet's hand, her heart pounding so loudly she almost didn't hear the foreperson speak. Guilty. On multiple counts. William didn't speak, didn't flinch, but Anna saw his jaw twitch, his nostrils flare. He looked less like a man facing justice and more like a cornered animal, realizing the trap had finally sprung shut. Tears welled in Anna's eyes, not out of joy or triumph, but something deeper, a quiet grief. This wasn't just the end of a trial, it was the death of an illusion. The man she once thought she loved no longer existed. Maybe he never had. Outside the courthouse, reporters flooded forward, flashbulbs, microphones, questions shouted from every direction. Anna stepped up to the podium. Her voice again was soft but firm. "I didn't choose this path, but I chose not to stay silent. This case was never just about me. It was about truth, accountability, and what happens when powerful people think they're untouchable. I'm grateful the justice system worked, and now I'm going home, to prepare for the most important role of my life, being a mother. She turned her chin high as Harriet and Mark flanked her protectively. Later that evening, Anna watched the news in silence. Pregnant wife topples tycoon. The headlines read, "Her face now, familiar to millions," flickered across the screen. But the woman looking back wasn't the same girl who once swooned in a private jet, dressed in borrowed diamonds. No, this woman was steel and warmth, fire and grace. The media attention was overwhelming, but Anna managed it on her own terms. She granted 2 interviews, one with a women's magazine, one with a major network, and in both she spoke not of revenge, but of responsibility. "I just want my son to grow up in a world where truth still matters," she said. And though critics still lingered in comment sections, their voices were now drowned by the flood of support letters, emails, care packages from strangers who saw her not as a scandal, but as a symbol of hope. With the child support and damages enforced by the court, Anna set up a modest trust fund for Matteo. She used a portion to begin something small but powerful, a non-profit newsroom dedicated to mentoring young women in investigative journalism, especially those from underrepresented communities. She named it the Sullivan Project, after the woman who had reminded her of her worth when she'd almost forgotten it. And through it all, each meeting, each call, each quiet night, feeding hope to the future, Anna stayed grounded by one undeniable truth. She had spoken, she had fought, she had won, and soon she would hold her son, knowing she had given him not just life, but legacy. In the last month of her pregnancy, Anna returned to Austin to be surrounded by family. Under Dr. Rollins's care, she gave birth to a baby boy she named Matteo Miguel Rutherford, keeping William's surname only so that the child would one day know his paternal identity. For better or worse, Matteo was born healthy, with a full head of dark hair that reminded Anna of her own baby pictures. Holding Matteo in her arms for the first time, Anna felt a surge of unconditional love, all the pain, the betrayal, the fear. It seemed distant in that moment. She vowed to devote herself to raising him with integrity, teaching him the values her parents had instilled in her. Her father, Miguel, wept tears of joy upon seeing his grandson, Patricia. Though frail, smiled brightly whenever she held the baby, whispering blessings in Spanish. 2 weeks later, while Anna was still recovering, Harriet stopped by with an envelope in hand. Inside was a short letter from William Rutherford, written from the Federal Detention Center. It was a strange mix of regret and bitterness. He denied some of the accusations, insisted he had truly loved Anna in his own way, and asked for a chance to see his son someday. Anna reread the letter multiple times, her emotions swirling anger, pity, sorrow. She penned a measured response, telling him that if he was sincere, he could start by admitting responsibility and taking steps toward restitution. She didn't promise visitation rights or forgiveness, only expressing that Matteo would learn the truth no matter what. Whether William chose to be a part of it in a positive way would be up to him. She mailed it and resolved not to dwell on it any further. In the months that followed, Anna began freelancing for major news outlets, focusing on corporate accountability stories. She found renewed purpose in her journalism, becoming an advocate for whistleblowers and pregnant women facing discrimination. Mark Underwood continued to publish hard-hitting exposés, sometimes consulting Anna for her insights. Harriet Sullivan returned to semi-retirement, but remained a guiding force in Anna's life, a maternal figure in the professional world. Word spread about Anna's work ethic and fearless reporting, Invitations to speak at conferences trickled in. She accepted only a few, wanting to balance her professional endeavors with the demands of motherhood. She was no longer the timid, starry-eyed girl who fell in love with a charming millionaire. She had become a woman who understood the power of truth, the necessity of courage, and the unbreakable bond of motherhood. And so life moved on. William Rutherford's downfall became a cautionary tale, a fleeting reference in the annals of corporate crime. Meanwhile, Anna's story wasn't just the pregnant wife who got dumped. It was about a woman who refused to stay silent in the face of betrayal, who discovered the strength within herself to stand up against corruption, and who ultimately emerged with something more valuable than all the millions in the world: a child she loved beyond measure, and a soul tempered by fire but unbroken. And that, dear viewers, is the remarkable, harrowing, and ultimately triumphant story of Ana Mendoza, the pregnant wife who was discarded by a millionaire but refused to be silenced. From her humble beginnings in Austin to standing up in a courtroom packed with cameras, she showed that love betrayed can transform into an unshakable resolve for justice. While William Rutherford's empire crumbled under the weight of his own deceit, Anna found her true purpose, mother to her precious son, and fierce advocate for truth. If this story moved you, please show your support by hitting the like button, sharing the video with friends who love real-life drama and redemption stories, and subscribing to our channel for more powerful narratives. Your engagement helps us reach more people who might find inspiration in Anna's bravery. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next deep dive drama.